You step into your garden and see two very different pictures. On one side, someone is bent over, digging deep into heavy soil. The shovel hits hard ground. Clumps have to be broken apart. Weeds seem to return no matter how much effort goes in. By the end of the morning, the back feels tight. The knees feel stiff. On the other side, plants are standing tall in dark, soft soil. The surface looks calm. There are fewer weeds. The watering can feel lighter because it is not needed as often. The gardener is upright more often than bent down. After just one season, many gardeners notice fewer weeds and less watering. There is one simple shift that changes how your soil works for you instead of against you. After watching thousands of home gardens over the years, one pattern keeps showing up. The gardens that look healthier often have one thing in common. And if your garden has started to feel harder than it used to, you're not doing anything wrong. Gardening has just changed. Before explaining why this worked, it helps to understand why things feel different now. Many people notice that gardening after 60 feels heavier than it once did. The soil seems harder to turn. Weeds seem stronger. The work feels longer. Over time, soil becomes compacted. Rain presses it down. Footsteps press it down. Even digging can press it down when the soil settles again. Compacted soil holds less air. Roots struggle more. Water does not move as easily. So the natural response is to dig more, to loosen it again, to break it apart. But that means more bending, more lifting, more twisting. And recovery time takes longer than it did at 40. What worked at 40 may not feel the same at 65. That is not weakness. That is simply change. Weeds also respond to disturbed soil. When soil is turned over, buried weed seeds are brought to the surface. Sunlight reaches them. They sprout. Then we dig again, and more seeds rise up. It becomes a quiet cycle. Work creates more work. So it is fair to ask a simple question. What if the digging itself is part of the reason the garden feels harder each year? What if less disturbance could actually lead to less effort? This is where many older gardeners have quietly made a shift. The method is called no-dig gardening. Some call it the layered compost method. The idea is surprisingly simple. Instead of turning the soil each season, you leave it mostly undisturbed. You place compost on top. You let nature do the mixing underneath. It may feel strange at first not to dig. That's okay. Most of us were taught that digging is part of gardening. But when compost is added to the surface, earthworms begin to pull it down. Microbes begin to break it apart. Tiny life in the soil creates channels. Over time, the structure improves without heavy tools. Professional growers have used this approach for decades in market gardens. Not because it is trendy, but because it protects soil structure and saves labor. When soil is not constantly disturbed, it forms layers that hold air and moisture more evenly. Roots move more easily. Water stays where plants can use it. Weed seeds stay buried instead of being lifted to the surface. The shift is quiet. It does not look dramatic, but the long-term effect is steady. The reason it works comes down to how soil behaves over time. In the first 30 days after adding a layer of compost on top, the surface begins to soften. You may notice more worms when you gently move aside the top layer. That is a good sign. Worms are natural tillers. They open the soil slowly and evenly. After about 60 days, fewer weeds tend to push through. This is partly because you are not turning up new seeds. It is also because the compost layer blocks some light from reaching weed seeds near the surface. By 90 days, many gardeners notice that plant roots grow deeper. When roots grow deeper, plants handle dry spells better. Watering becomes less frequent. Not absent, but less demanding. Climate plays a role here. In cold regions, compost breaks down more slowly. You may not see quick changes in early spring. That does not mean it is failing. The soil simply needs warmth to wake up. In warmer regions, compost integrates more quickly. Worms are active sooner. Changes may feel faster. If your results are slower, that doesn't mean you've done something wrong. Soil improvement is a gradual process. It responds to seasons. There are a few small mistakes that beginners sometimes make with this method. They are easy to correct. One common issue is adding too thin a layer of compost. If the layer is very thin, less than about 2 inches, weed seeds can still find their way through easily. The soil underneath also receives less steady nourishment. When weeds return quickly, people may assume the method does not work. Often, the solution is simply adding a fuller layer next time. Another issue is using compost that is not fully finished. Fresh compost can still be heating inside. If it smells sour or feels warm to the touch, it may need more time to settle. Placing hot compost directly around plant roots can stress them. It is better to let compost age until it smells earthy and feels cool. If this has happened in your garden, it is not a failure. Compost is a living material. Learning to read it takes a little practice. These adjustments are simple. Beyond the soil itself, many gardeners notice something else. Their bodies feel different. Without turning the soil each season, there is far less heavy lifting. There is no double digging. There is no need for a heavy tiller. Bending becomes less constant. You still move. You still plant. But the deep, forceful work decreases. This can make a real difference in how long you enjoy gardening. Energy is conserved. Recovery time shortens. You can step back and observe more instead of pushing through strain. Many caregivers also find this approach easier to support. It is simpler to add a layer on top than to break apart compacted ground. The goal is not to remove all effort. Gardening always involves some movement, but it shifts from force to patience. Do less physical strain. Grow more steady results. People often wonder if this works everywhere. In colder climates, timing matters. Adding compost in early spring, once the ground begins to thaw, allows worms to move upward as temperatures rise. Before winter, a thicker layer of mulch can help protect the soil surface from freezing winds. In hot climates, moisture management becomes more important. A layer of mulch over the compost can slow evaporation. Compost tends to break down faster in warm weather, which can be helpful. But it also means keeping an eye on moisture levels. For small yards, this method can work especially well. Raised beds respond quickly because the soil area is defined. Containers also benefit from gentle top dressing with compost. Even a patio garden can follow the same principle. You do not need a large space. You do not need expensive tools. The idea is adaptable. After one full season, the changes often become more visible. The soil looks darker. It feels softer when you press your fingers into it. Weeds are still present, but fewer of them break through. Water tends to soak in rather than run off. Plants often develop stronger root systems. That strength shows up in steadier growth. After one season, the soil often looks richer than it has in years. This does not mean you will never see a weed again. Gardens are living systems, but the balance shifts. And this pattern repeats year after year in low-disturbance gardens. Soil builds rather than resets each season. If you have already tried this approach, you may have noticed your own changes. Perhaps fewer weeds. Perhaps less watering. Perhaps simply less soreness at the end of the day. If you feel comfortable sharing, you might let others know what climate you garden in and what you noticed after a season. Your experience may help someone who is just beginning and wondering if this could work for them too. Gardening has always been about partnership with the land. Over time, we learn that force is not always the answer. As we grow older, our methods can grow wiser. Instead of fighting soil each spring, we can support it gently. Instead of turning everything upside down, we can add nourishment from above and allow life below to respond. If you're tired, that's okay. Your method may just need adjusting. The quiet shift is simple. Stop disturbing the soil as much. Feed it from the top. Let worms and microbes handle the deeper work. Gardening should feel sustainable. It should feel like something you can continue into your 70s and beyond. When we step back from heavy effort and allow natural systems to operate, we often see steady improvement. The lesson is not about doing nothing. It is about doing less of what creates more work. Over time, the garden becomes softer. The weeds become fewer. The watering becomes lighter, and the body feels more at ease. Do less. Get more.